Hi, motion folk. I'm Sabrina Cheney.
And I'm Penny Niederlander.
And you've tuned into NoGraph, the motion graphics podcast where motion graphics is all but forbidden as a topic of conversation.
The idea is we're all familiar with the social media peer pressure that there's always a new program to learn,
a new style to master,
endless tutorials and presentations to catch up on,
Slacks and Discords to join.
But we have this little theory that what really makes our work interesting is what people bring to it from outside our normal circles.
So here at NoGraph, we push all that aside and block out the noise and the pressure.
Every week, we'll have a special industry guest on, and we'll just talk hobbies and passions and whatever they love to do when they're not at their desk. And at the end of every episode, we'll turn the mic over to our new friend, and they'll have a couple minutes to tie it all in.
This is a podcast about our industry from the standpoint of a sustainable lifestyle and an ever-deepening well of inspiration.
Thanks for joining, and let's go.
Today we have Matthew Encina.
What up, Matt?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Dude, it's so good to have you here. Matt, you and I have gone back now. Do we want to say it's 20 plus years?
Just about. I think just about. I feel like we met each other in 2006. So almost.
No, 2002. That's when I moved out.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so let's just say 20 years. That sounds about right.
Yeah, let's round down.
Jeez.
Yeah,
for people like me who are meeting you for the first time today, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the kind of stuff you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a creative director, designer, and an educator. And I've been in the creative industry now for just a little over 20 years. First starting in print design, eventually finding my way into motion. I spent about a decade as a creative director in advertising, working on a lot of TV commercials for brands like Xbox. And then the past few years, I've gotten into education and content creation, where I've been sharing a little bit more about the lifestyle, the things that I do, the things that I make, and then the process behind those things. And lately, for the past 3 years, I've actually been poking around in industrial design and have launched a couple of products myself. So it's been a very interesting journey for me so far. And I feel like I'm in a post-MoGraph career and kind of exploring where the world wants to take me. I feel like I have set sail and I'm just listening and letting the winds kind of take me wherever my curiosity wants to go.
That's pretty wild. I have seen some of your stuff. Like, did you design a keyboard?
Yeah, that was my recent release. That was something that was really fun to do.
Like mechanical keyboard?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Talk to me about this, because you can get into a whole rabbit hole with mechanical keyboards.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I got sucked into the rabbit hole probably about 3 years ago. Something that I avoided for a long time. And then a bunch of folks around me, they're like, I'm surprised you're not into custom mechanical keyboards. I feel like that would be your thing. Just because I think the outside perception of me is somebody that likes to build things, likes to tinker, likes to design. So I was like, but I just avoided it for a long time. I don't know why. I was like happy with everything I had. And then during the pandemic where everyone's locked down, it's like, okay, I built a bunch of furniture in my place. I kind of built out all the rooms in my house and I ran out of things to build. I was like, all right, let me give this a mechanical keyboard thing a try. And then I got my first one, then I got my second one. And then probably by my 12th or 15th one, I was just like, okay, I'm in very deep. But really what really pulls me into any hobby is always the community. Like the first part is the external stuff. It's like, ooh, that's a cool thing to tinker with or to learn about. And I get very deep. And then usually what keeps me there are the people around it. So I've been very fortunate to have been welcomed by a lot of folks in that community, because there's a really big enthusiast community that has just kind of helped me learn about the space. I've gone to meetups where there's these events where everybody brings their keyboards, their custom builds, and everybody kind of shares and, has the water cooler talk. And it's so fun. It's so crazy. And I think where things kind of turned into me designing my own is after 3 years of being into it, I've bought and tried so many different keyboards. and there was like a little space in there where there was a type of design that I did not see. There was an opportunity. There's like, cool, I tried all these other designer keyboards, and there's something that doesn't quite fit the expression that I would want to see in the world. That on top of me being an amateur woodworker, building all this furniture in my studio at home, and then also kind of just peeking into learning about industrial design, about CAD modeling, right? There's this nice transfer over of learning all this stuff for visual 3D, and then
Yeah.
those skills transferring over to CAD modeling, which is different but similar, and there's a lot of overlap there. So all of these things just overlapped and then eventually turned into this opportunity where I could design my own keyboard, and just released that on June 12th, 2024.
Oh, hey.
You didn't just like, it's not like the community. I've seen the communities where people like buy the different parts and combine them in different ways, stuff like that. And like maybe someone does some 3D printing and whatever, but like yours is legit. Like you CAD model your stuff and had it made. Is that right?
Yeah, so I collaborated with a company called Mode Design. So they produce premium custom mechanical keyboards. I just developed a relationship with them over the years, obviously just naturally occupying the same space. They're in the community, so am I. And then they just asked one day after we've just kind of developed a relationship. So at that point, it's like something that I really wanted to do, but I had no idea how to do CAD modeling. So, but I had a project. So I was like, all right, I'm going to learn, I'm going to commit to this. And over the course of about almost a year, I learned CAD modeling, designed this thing, we prototyped it, made a bunch of versions of it, and then eventually we sold it as a product, as a limited run product to the community.
That's
That
awesome.
is so cool.
And that wasn't something you were pursuing like with work, right? Like that was just hobby. I'm sorry, I'm talking to Sabrina.
Yeah. No. Well, okay. So that's the funny thing, because for, I would say, most of the past like 15 years or so, I've been an employee, full-time employee, mostly working with Christo at Blind, doing motion design stuff, and then at the Future, where we're teaching creative education. And 3 years ago, I quit my job, and that was the best job I've ever had, because he was such a fantastic mentor to me. And since I quit my job 3 years ago, it, like I kind of mentioned at the beginning of this chat, it's like I've just been letting my curiosity take me wherever that wants to go. So what I've been up to for the past 3 years has been kind of wild and different, right? So I feel like now I can kind of call myself an industrial designer, at least just starting out. And so that has become part of the things that I do outside of the content and outside of a little bit of client work here and there. So it's very peppered. It's hard to say what exactly I do, but I know that, by trade I'm a designer, and by heart I'm an artist, and somewhere in between there I just have all these different expressions and different avenues of what that could be.
Yeah, the principles apply to a lot of different creative opportunities. I had so many thoughts coming up because weirdly in high school, I got really excited because my high school offered an animation elective, but to get there, I had to take 2 years of prerequisites, and they had to do with CAD. I learned CAD software for the animation class. And then when I got to the animation class, they wanted to teach us 3ds Max, and I was not interested.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna do Adobe Flash all year.
Right.
It was such a strange path, but I went to school in Houston, Texas, so I have a feeling that the educational pathway in my school district's minds was like, we're gonna do animation, but you're gonna like learn all this stuff for an engineering pathway where you're gonna probably animate an oil rig. And I was
Right.
like, where's the character stuff? I want to go to Pixar, you know?
Right.
It was odd, but at the same time, like the stuff, the fundamentals that we learned in those classes, I remember eventually as we learned different creative cloud software stuff that we learned in the CAD programs, I was really wishing we had in like Illustrator and stuff when you're drawing a line and you could
Yes.
just kind of trim it, chop it. I'm like, oh, we need this in Illustrator and it's not there. And I
Right.
think as the software is improved, it's gotten better. But um, like, yeah, just those building blocks can apply to anything. And then, like you said, it could apply to things as fun as mechanical keyboards. I remember looking into all that and kind of just from a peephole looking in to the community. And you're right, it's so DIY, very fun. Um, there's a strange lack of full size keyboards, which was mine. That's what I
Hmm.
was searching for. I'm like, I want my numpad. I know
Hmm.
y'all like your minimalist footprint,
Hmm.
but I want that extra space for my numbers. But and then I get into the YouTube rabbit hole of let's compare the sounds of all the different
Yes.
switches. Like this one
Yes.
makes a clack clack clack, and this one is
Right.
tick tick tick, and I'm like, oh, I
Right.
love this.
Right. Like I
So
want
sad.
them all. Like you want to experiment with all of them in the lab, which is really fun. And it can be overwhelming. Like there's so many variables to play with in that space that I think is why people enjoy it so much as a hobbyist, right? Like if you come into any hobby and there's a lot of things that you can um play with. So I'm thinking about like model making or Legos or anything like that, where there's just so many things you can do with it. That's where the tinker inside anyone can really have some joy with that type of project.
Totally. Sounds like there's a lot of customization opportunities too,
Yes.
which I guess translates well into woodworking too. Can you talk a little bit about that? Were you completely new to it? Um,
Yes.
Whoa, yeah.
Yes.
What was it
Yeah.
like getting into that?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I started my woodworking journey during the pandemic. I think, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of folks just they had time to spare and time at home, a lot of time at home. And for me, there was just so many things that I never did but wanted to do with my home space. I've lived in the same condo for a really long time, maybe like 12 years now. And there's a lot of areas and spaces that I never really thought out, but now that I had all this time to myself, I was like, well, that is an interesting corner. What could we use it for? And I don't know what got into my head. I think I just started arranging stuff at home, and eventually the bug got caught into my head like, oh, maybe I could probably build this. It shouldn't be so bad. I'm watching other people on YouTube and they're making it feel very approachable, right? Like I'm watching somebody start to end do some of these projects. It's like, okay, that's a box, that's a table, like that's not so bad. And I just started feeling like it was approachable because there was interesting examples and role models online who are willing to share and teach the things that they're making. And eventually, I started building out just some simple things, some shelves, and then it got into desks. And then we built out my wife. We built out like a whole kind of wall for her of like desks and shelves and cabinets and all kinds of stuff. And this is all just YouTube University, learning about all that stuff and just appreciating how hard and how much work it takes to make one piece of furniture or one well-designed object. And that just kept going after that. And eventually I got my own studio where I currently work out of, outside of my home right now. And then I pretty much built out all the furniture there as well. And that was a fun little project to do as well.
That's amazing. Like, what's you have like serious woodworking machine by now? Like, do you have like
No, not
no?
even. No, I mean, it's surprising what you can do with just the basics, which is like a saw with a
Yeah,
track, circular saw with a track, so you could cut straight lines, a drill or an impact driver to fasten everything together with screws and glue. And those are, I would say, like the main things that you need. And those are the two primary tools that I've used to build pretty much everything. There's other tools that you can get. A lot I've borrowed from my dad because he has a bunch of stuff, luckily, and he's actually helped me build a lot of things, which I've shared and documented on my YouTube channel. So he makes a lot of appearances in there, and you can kind of see us working together, which is great bonding time with him. And obviously, he has a lot of knowledge too, so I'm getting to learn from him outside of YouTube University. But yeah, I would say you can do a majority of things with just a nice saw and a drill.
that's awesome. I imagine I have in the past like built like outdoor stuff or like little things that are very utilitarian, like
Yeah.
not well designed, but like strong, nuclear blast strong.
Yeah.
So make it out of 2x4s and deck screws.
That's right. I
But
get it.
because like I also, you must get good wood, right? Do you have like do you have a wood guy?
There, I'm very fortunate where there is good resources here in LA. The place I like to go to a lot is Anderson Plywood. So they have a lot of just great selections of different species of wood because I did what most people do, which is, you know, go to a big box store like Home Depot and you're like, "Yeah, this wood is okay. Like it works."
Yeah,
But
pine.
yeah, is there anything more? Because I see all the other furniture that's nice out there is built with walnut or white oak and or maple, and it's like I don't see these here. Where can I go? And then started asking around, and then people directed me to there, and luckily they have all those things and more. And so yeah, I build most of my furniture out of white oak because that's just like it's a nice medium value, has some nice character from like dark to light, and also the texture of it is quite nice. And yeah, white oak is just pretty classic in my eyes.
That's
Ooh.
awesome. Is this going to turn into like more than just like your house and your office? Like you're doing get into the industrial design area. Do you see this as staying a hobby or becoming career stuff?
No, I definitely am moving into it being more of a. It's hard to say it's a career, but it's something that I'm going to produce more in. So outside of the keyboard, I've also have created keycaps. I'm going to release a switch. I have a USB cable that I've designed. All of these are collaborations with other folks that I've kind of met and became friends with in the space, in the keyboard space. And now I'm just designing all these peripherals. I've also designed a set of products with a company called Grove Made. They're out in Portland, and they focus on desk accessories. So we designed this kit called the Note Taking Kit, and that's made out of metal and wood. Again, kind of just combining a lot of my interests together. And yeah, so these are all projects that have been happening over the past 3 years. They're all starting to come to fruition now, and now it's just giving me momentum. It's like, okay, these are done. These are all interesting. I learned a lot of things. Now, what do I want to do with that? Right. And so I have ideas of more desk accessories that I want to build out and machine, because now that CAD modeling and learning about manufacturing and all that stuff is become clearer to me, more accessible to me. Now it's like, okay, what do I really want to make? Because now I have tools, right? Now I have tools. It's just like with design or animation or anything. It's like once you learn a particular tool or trick, you're like, oh shoot, that unlocks new things that I can put into my work, right? And so it's having that same process now, but it's just more physical materials. It's like, oh yeah, I could design and model this thing, we could prototype it, and it can be machined, and then it could be manufactured and mass produced if we wanted to. And there's so many ways to do that, and that world has just opened up to me. So I'm very curious, fascinated, and luckily it's also making financial sense where it's like these are things that I can make, not just for me, but things that I could sell to others, where it's something that I want to see in the world. And luckily, other folks can appreciate that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're also getting super bespoke furniture and not dropping mad money at Design Within Reach or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
We have one of those that I pass on the way to work, and yeah, it's like I will never go in there.
The name is a slap in the face.
A little,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but very pretty from the window.
Yeah, I have a funny story about that Design Within Reach. I remember 2006. I was in the classroom at Art Center, and Chris Doe was the teacher, and I was there with Chris Reel, our roommate. We know Chris, and Chris Reel had just moved into his new spot, and he was like decorating it out. It's like, oh, I need a couch and this, and he was just window shopping on IKEA because like IKEA is like so accessible, right? So we're looking at all this stuff on the computer, and then Christo overhears this. Is like, oh, what are you guys doing? It's like, oh, we're just looking at furniture. And he's like, oh, it's a good place to look at Design Within Reach. we're students at art center, like making $0, and then he's like, "Oh, check this out," and we look at it, oh, beautiful. And then once you see the prices, you're like, "What?
Yeah.
Not within reach." It's like the opposite. It is the opposite.
That's Chris. That ottoman is $3,500.
Yeah, that shares 10 grand right there. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna get that?
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, but now you can build it. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Your teachers were paid very differently than at SCAD.
That's right. That's right.
That's funny. All right, I gotta ask you. I'm gonna take a turn. Are you still dancing?
Yes. Yeah.
Are you still Suicide Kings, or is it?
Yeah. So I started break dancing or breaking in 1999. So last century I started dancing, and it's something that's been on and off with me for a long time. I'll have moments where life gets busy, other things get busy. Like during art center, I wasn't dancing too much because I was so focused at school, right? And then certain parts of my career, I was just so focused on the career that I couldn't really dance. But lately, over the past 3 years, I've been into it again, where I've been practicing probably once a week. I'll still go to some competitions. Like, I'm an old guy, I'm turning 40 this year, and the people that are there are in their prime, like young 20s, they're so athletic, so good. But for me, it's become another outlet for me. So breaking is interesting in the sense that it's part sport and then part art, right? So there's the competitive aspect of it that's very athletic and very performance based. And then the other half of it is all about creative expression, right? Because it's not the move, it's the groove, as they like to say, right? It's like, it's not the moves that you do, it's like how you do it and the way that you express yourself that really makes you unique in this space. And for me, I'm leaning into that creative aspect, the artistic side of it so much, where yes, I am not at the level of the very, very athletic folks, and I don't think I ever really was, but it's an interesting outlet for me where even with the work that I do, and I get a lot of my creative juices out in the work that I do, there's still like a certain itch that just cannot come out unless it's this physical activity. And it's been this for me. And I know probably both of you have your own kind of activities where you get some of that out. And I'm curious what that is for both of you all.
Yeah. Penny and I both have skated, like roller skated, but in very different contexts. Because Penny, you were in roller derby. I like to go around in a circle.
Roller derby is a circle as well.
Yeah,
just violent.
Yeah. I get it. I have to have a physical activity. I can't just do brain stuff or sitting, whatever. Like right now I'm running more than I'm skating. I've like taken up I ran my first ultra marathon last year.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm 50K, which is
wow.
Some people wouldn't call an ultra marathon, but it's longer than a marathon, so I count it.
That's longer than me walking down my block. So props to that. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I understand. Like I need to leave the computer, leave the house, do something much more animal than any of that stuff.
Yeah, I for me, these types of activities, dancing for me in particular, is so good because not only is it exercise, which we all need to do a lot of, right? Especially as we get older, but it's one of these activities where I can turn off my brain from whatever I'm working on, right? Because it's so easy for me. Like the moment that I wake up, the sun is rising, and then I go to my computer and I can just start working, right? Like that's like I'm so dialed in and focused like that. And there's so many things that I want to do that I can get glued to my computer really fast. And even when I try to do something else at home, like, okay, I'll go work out here at home. I have some rings that I'll do some pull-ups on or something. Like I'll do it, but I'm half doing it because I want to get back to my computer to start doing the brain stuff, right? It's like, it's so easy for me to get pulled in because the other stuff does not engage me. But for whatever reason, dancing like takes me out of it, right? Whereas like I stop thinking about the thing on my computer and all I'm focused on is like what I'm doing on the dance floor and just like being a lot more in the moment there. So I really appreciate that activity for that reason.
Yeah. It's disconnecting you, but in a way that is engaging, just not with the stuff that it's a different part of your brain, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
yoga is that for me, and swimming.
Mm.
Like, as soon as you get in the water, it's like, well, if I stop moving, that's it. So I'm focused. I'm honed in, you know?
You have a mortality thing connected to your
Yeah,
sport.
I think
Right.
so. But I did get into climbing for a bit as well, and I know that you're into that too. And
Hmm.
I'm, uh, I guess before swinging into that pocket, um, I wanted to ask, how do you think breaking compared to other dance like salsa that's more communal,
Hmm.
um, do you still have that aspect of community? And I know you have community in breaking, but is
Hmm.
it still like a give and take with people, or is it more about individual expression compared to other forms of dance?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's both, right? So at the end of the day, it really is about individual expression that kind of makes you stand out. If you want to be a somebody, or if you want to make a statement within, that community. But uh, for me lately, the only reason that I'm able to do it, as I mentioned with the keyboard hobby, there's a community there. So I still have a lot of friends, luckily, that are into it. So I will go practice with them. These are folks that are within my crew, some people I just know from the scene. And, I'll go to different practice spots around LA, and it's very give and take. So it's not like you're dancing with somebody like salsa where it's a partner dance, right? In
Yeah.
the competitive aspect, there's battling where you're going against each other and you're trying to one up each other. In these practice sessions, it's at least the ones that I like to attend, it's very much being in the lab where you're contributing ideas. You're kind of like, I'll give you an example. I was at practice yesterday, and we'll everyone will kind of practice a little run, like their own little get down. They'll go in for 30 seconds, a minute, and then I might see something that somebody else is doing. It's like, oh, have you tried doing this? Like this was a very cool movement, like how you looped your leg around. Have you tried to follow through by like threading your arm through here? Or vice versa, and then they'll play with that, and then that gives me a little thing to play with. It's like, oh, that's a fun concept. So for me, where the give and take is with all of that is just sharing concepts and kind of building, right? Just very much as a designer, if you're working on a team, you're kind of collaborating to build a project to the end, and you're kind of sharing ideas back and forth of what can make it better. And
Yeah.
what I get out of dance, it's kind of the same way. It's like we're all bring something different to the table, different perspectives, different things that our body will allow us to do and that we can do, or things that we're very good at. But then it's that cross pollination of ideas where then we all kind of come out of it a little bit better. It's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that without your contribution. And
Right.
so that's very fun for me. So that's the aspect that I'm enjoying the most in this season of my life and dancing.
Very cool.
It,
Yeah, and rock climbing is similarly a very communal sport. Um,
yes.
and it's fun, but
Yeah.
I'm also like kind of on the edge of with rollerblading, how I'm like, I love this activity, but I'm gonna stay basic forever. That's how
Hmm.
I feel with rock climbing too. It's like I
Hmm.
love a belay climb. I'm never
Hmm.
gonna make it to V anything like anything major is no. Like people will go on the wall like Spider-Man and I'm like, "What?"
Right.
That's
Right.
neat.
Right. Yeah, there's a certain level of try hard with certain hobbies where you're like, yeah, that's not for me, right? Because like certain people, there's a threshold where there's a casual, like I'm a casual hobbyist or I'm casually participating in this, and then beyond that is like, no, I'm taking this seriously because there's either some competitive aspect or they're just really into that. Like that is
Yeah.
an identifier of them in their life. Like, ooh, if I'm very good at this thing, then I'm just seen within my community. I feel good about myself, and there's something for me to build on every day in this particular sport or hobby, right? So I can see why. I'm definitely on the casual end when it comes to rock climbing too. My brother and his wife and my family, like they're really into it. They're a lot a little bit more hardcore than I am, for me, I'll just like casually join them once a month these days, and it's just mostly to hang out and get exercise in a different way.
Oh, that's fun.
That's a tough one to kind of pick up once in a while and like improve. Like it's really fun.
Mhm.
I've done it a few times, but I was like, oh, if you go every few months, you're starting at 0 every time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once the calluses heal, and you're
Yeah.
like, well,
Yeah.
now I got to get calluses all over again.
Exactly. I think I found a good cadence for me where it's like I don't really lose too much, but I could still come in and feel good about what I'm doing there. And
Yeah.
but I know it's like if I'm consistent at it more of like a everyday or multi times during the week, then I will definitely excel, right? But I don't really have a desire to do that. It's just casual for me.
Well, also like, all right, so I told a friend that you were going to be on the show last week, and I sent him. I found some YouTube videos of you dancing. I think
Hmm.
older ones, and I was, like that sport is you got to be in great shape. So
Hmm.
I can imagine you probably are a little a little humble with your with the climbing, or anything like. Can you still like do freezes and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, with all that stuff, I still try to. There's a certain level of performance that I still want out of that. With all the activities that I do, I still try to stay in shape. I work out probably 4 or 5 times a week. Sometimes mostly at home with just some rings. Like I love calisthenics. It's super simple. And then when I can, I'll dance probably once or twice a week, and then I'll climb maybe once or twice a month. So I just cycle these things, and for me, it's just more about feeling good about my body. Just because, there are days I'll just wake up and I'm sore for no reason. I was like, oh, I'm old. Like that's somebody had told me that a couple of years ago. It's like, you're old when you wake up and you're hurting for no reason. I'm like, okay, I'm definitely at that point. So I just gotta take care of my body and do what I can and appreciate what it's allowing me to do while I have it. So I'm
Have you
definitely in that season.
have you woken up and been like, man, I drank too much last night, and then you realized that you didn't drink last night? You just didn't drink enough water.
That's right. That's correct. It's like why do I have a headache and why do I feel all like creaky? It's like, oh yeah, I just need water. What the hell's wrong with me? That's
Yeah.
why I keep drinking water right now.
Good. Any other little hobbies you got squirreled away, or things you're interested coming up that you'd like to get into that maybe you haven't yet?
Um uh Not so much. I mean, I think the big thing is just kind of following through with whatever I decide to do with more industrial design, product design. Maybe I'm thinking about getting a 3D printer and doing some more prototyping at home or just like building little jigs and random things here. But I don't know yet if I want to commit to having that at home because it's a big footprint, it's expensive, and then I actually have to use it. Where there's at this in this day and age, like if I really want to prototype something, there's print on demand services. So if I want to have a nice high fidelity 3D print of something, I could just send that off rather than having to buy all this equipment at home. So I'm on the fence about that one, but that's the only thing I'm kind of considering.
Right. Yeah, 3D printers have a lot of different utility, but it's coming up with what's going to be your main thing to use it for.
Hmm.
That's that's a challenge.
Hmm.
I don't know how I got into another rabbit hole, which was like different cosplay for anime or something, and
Hmm.
somebody like fashion, like people make really elaborate costumes that before would have been really challenging to do out of foam or sculpting by just being able to 3D print.
Yeah.
And that it's like, oh, if that existed when I was younger and it was accessible, I would have been all over that trying to learn how to do that
Yeah.
because like my attempt at a Full Metal Alchemist cosplay when I was really young was like, I'm gonna put aluminum foil on my hand.
Right.
And it looks so bad. But it was adorable. I look back on my 14-year-old self with so much like, oh, I just want to hug her. She
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
nerdy. But yeah, it's like if you want to get into cosplay, that'd be a great excuse to use a 3D printer.
Yeah, I've seen some incredible things built. I forget. I want to say her name is Emily the Engineer is her handle. I think that's her name on Instagram. But she builds like such high fidelity Iron Man suits, and they
Whoa.
like the finish on them. And it's all 3D printed, and she shares her process and the finished stuff. And then there's moving parts, articulate parts. Things are lit up. I'm like, wow,
I
this
could see
is
you as Iron Man, don't you think, Penny? I think
yeah.
I'm detecting some super energy.
I could see that being a dangerous rabbit hole for you, like
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like figuring out how to do things that are very complex and that being your thing for a few years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much that type, right? Like I'm a very curious type, and then once I get into something, I just go way deep into the rabbit hole, like way beyond the surface, because it's like if I'm curious about it, like I really want to know how things work in and out. And yeah, I got to be careful about where I apply that energy to, right? Like how is that really, yeah, how is that helping me? Is it bringing me joy? Is it something that I can monetize? Like what is it that I'm putting all my energy into? And definitely it can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, have we reached a point in time where we spin it all around? What do you think, Sabrina?
I think so.
We've
And we've
covered
been
really,
uh very gently towing the line between
yeah.
a little bit of work talk here and there, but without like super getting into it. So yeah,
Mhm.
let me do the banner. You can talk about work now. Officially.
It's okay.
Yes, you are free. So I noticed as we were talking, the very much there's a DIY aspect, there's community,
Mhm.
comes up a lot, and I could totally guess how some of those things fold into what you do, or what you were doing in motion design. But
Mhm.
how would you put it in your own words, Matthew? Is this coalescing um,
Yeah.
into, yeah, what are your final words?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that I've learned in my career as a designer is there's this attitude of we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out because the client had paid us and we're running out of time because the deadline is there. So we got to figure out how this thing works, right? And so much in MoGraph is like, okay, we created a beautiful style frame. We won the pitch, but how the heck are we going to animate this thing, right? And I've been in that situation so many times that it's developed this sense of resourcefulness and resilience where it's like, oh, okay, we did it and we did it again and we did it again. Somehow we're figuring this out, right? And I think there's that great kind of feeling as a creative person that if you just focus and you give yourself a deadline, you can figure it out. You'll figure out a way to make it work, and that has become something that is echoed and continued on with a lot of the things that I do in my life. There's a great quote by the designer Massimo Vignelli. He says, if you can design one thing, you can design anything. And that particular quote has really just stuck with me. So even when I'm getting into woodworking as an amateur, it's like, oh, shoot, I could figure this out, right? I need to figure out how to make a nice joint right here or how to design a particular thing. I could just do my internet searches, kind of jerry rig a couple things together, and then it works. I'll figure it out. And so there's definitely that DIY component to it where you might not have the legit or official way to do things, but you figure it out, and what people see or how it's experienced totally works. And especially, I would say, even in the early days of motion design, I would say in the early 2000s, where I was really getting into it, it was all DIY, meaning there was no crazy pipelines from my experience. It's very much like photo bashing, photo collaging, like doing interesting things in comp to make something look right for this 10-second or 30-second spot, right?
Yeah.
Where nowadays, like I feel like everything is so baked out and perfect pipelines, like GPU rendering, like everything can be perfect and beautiful and so technical, which is great.
Yeah.
Like I really appreciate that stuff. And it's a different way of DIYing and thinking about it before when we were still in SD days, where it's like, oh, we can cheat a lot, we can hide a lot with these little 480 frames, you know. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a long way of saying that DIY component definitely kind of um, has come, I've seen from my past in motion design, and still continues this day. And the other aspect of what you're sharing is community. And again, it's just figuring it all together, right? So I've obviously worked on some great projects with great teams. Penny, I've worked with on a couple of projects. And, even with dancing, right? That story I was telling earlier about contributing different ideas and just like bringing different perspectives and different skill sets really helps flesh out a particular idea and makes it a lot better than if it was just made by the individual alone.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. There's a certain level of polish these days that didn't used to exist, kind of out of necessity because of the technological constraints. But it was
Mhm.
funny as you were describing that. I was visualizing, like, I could see it. I could see, like, and Fleet Foxes and MGMTs playing in my head as I'm visualizing, and I'm like, I could remember. But a couple decades ago, it was a lot of, like, more collage-y
Hmm.
because, probably someone was like, "File import JPEG, and what can I do?" You know?
I
Right.
God, I miss those times though. Like, I mean, Matthew, like the Born Empire, like brief period of time where like the crew that we had assembled, like you and Chris were like on the like design technical side. Like Aaron was very tactile, and Aaron Bjork with his
Hmm.
like his very specific type of design. And then like
Hmm.
Michael Relf was doing like hand drawn
Him and Brendan.
and but Brendan
Yeah.
brought like Brendan Wyeth. He brought like this insane, fastidious, like he could draw Renaissance paintings
Right.
and like in like a day, and we
Right.
would animate it. And
Right.
I miss those days because it felt I miss that scrappy time. But
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah, it is. I mean, just be happy that it happened, right? And
yeah,
I'm so grateful that I went through that, just because, again, when you develop that sense of resourcefulness and resilience, like that really sticks with you for your whole life, I believe. So, whatever kind of problems or challenges that you need to solve in your life or in your career, like that sense that, oh, I could do this because I've done this before. I've solved a problem I didn't know how to do before. Like that is such a powerful thing to have. And I wish that everybody goes through those kind of trials or has something in their life or in their career where they are challenged in the ways like, hey, this is a little bit of the wild, wild west here. There's no right answers yet. And that's up for you to develop and design. Right. And
Yeah.
hopefully everybody's experienced some of that in their life and career, because it's such a fantastic lesson to learn and have with you as you grow.
Yeah. That sounds like a good antidote to, perfectionism. Like,
Hmm.
if you're having a if you're getting in your own way and putting up a wall between what you think you can do and what you wanna do, it's
Hmm.
looking back at, "What have I accomplished and learn how to do? And I am smart enough. I can figure it out."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just recognizing and thinking back to any moment where you were a beginner at something, or you're again like tackling a problem for the first time, then that definitely gives you a little bit of confidence to be like, okay, well, why not this? And the other aspect of it too is just having good um, visual role models out there. And I wanted to share this because I feel like I've been very fortunate enough to have a lot of good examples of role models around me that have built things from scratch, that have made me see the possibility in my own life, right? So a person I mentioned earlier, Christo, he was my teacher at Art Center back in 2006. He was my boss for many years, over a decade. And I watched him go through the ups and downs of the motion design or running a motion design studio with all the different turmoil in the market, and watching technology and the landscape change from TV to digital and everything in between. And then also watching him build a startup, a creative education company from nothing to what it is today, which I think they have over like 2 million subscribers on YouTube. And they've just created a whole business around that. Seeing people like that I can connect with or resonate with helps me see in my mind, like, if that person can do it, why not me? right? And it's also one of the reasons why I try to put myself out there with my YouTube content or stuff on Instagram and share my process, because my hope at the end of the day, somebody will see something that I've built or designed and then have that same kind of aha moment. It's like, oh, Matthew did it. Why not me?
Yep.
And just unlock that. It's like, okay, there's a path for me. Now I could go forward. I could do this thing that I've always wanted to do. And now I could, it feels accessible, and it doesn't feel like there's much hindering me. I could see this path in front of me a little bit clearer.
That's awesome.
Well,
I think like that's awesome is our way of being like, I think that's the quote, you know?
Yeah.
The plane, Matthew.
I guess to wrap it up for realsies, where can people find you? Where can people find your YouTube channel and your keyboard explorations?
Mhm.
If they're interested, where can they find it?
Yeah, you can find me pretty much on every social platform at Matthew Encina. That's my first and last name. And you can find me on my website at matthewencina.com. And then I have a website for my company, modmusings.com, which is my design studio where I'm doing these industrial design projects like the keyboard and keycaps and stuff like that. But yeah, if you just look up Matthew Encina, luckily I don't have much search competition, and I will pop up on the top of search pretty much wherever you look.
Yay.
Fantastic.
Love having SEO on your side.
Yeah.
We'll put those links as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for the time, Matthew. It was great talking to you.
Oh, no. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate you holding the space for me and allowing us to chit chat about this stuff and allowing me to ramble about all the things going on in my life.
Oh, no, we love it. This is awesome.
Anytime.
This is what we're here for.
Cool.
Well, all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And how do we wrap this up? I never quite know. Sabrina.
Oh, see you next time on the next episode of NoGraph. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.